Elite German pilots at the Chicago Aviation Summit thought they were being clever when they switched to German to mock their young black waitress. They laughed about how she probably never finished high school as Zara Williams served their champagne. They said these people only know how to clean tables, not serve real professionals like them. What they didn't know was that every word they spoke was being understood by someone they'd completely underestimated. But their conversation was about to take a much darker turn. As the night progressed, their mockery shifted to something far more sinister. Detailed discussions about illegal flight operations, bribed safety inspectors, and cargo runs that violated international law. They assumed their crimes were safe behind the barrier of language. They assumed wrong. Because when Zara turned around and responded in perfect, crisp German, asking if she should translate their conversation about falsifying safety records for the aviation board, she wasn't just exposing their racism. She was about to bring down an entire criminal network with 6 words they never saw coming. If you believe that intelligence and dignity transcend all barriers, please subscribe to our channel. Help us share stories that prove prejudice always reveals more about the person showing it than the person receiving it. Your support helps us honor those who rise above ignorance with grace and strength. The grand ballroom of the Palmer House Hotel in Chicago glittered with crystal and gold trim. The International Aviation Summit's closing gala brought together elite pilots, aviation executives, and industry leaders. Among the expensive tuxedos and designer gowns moved service staff, nearly invisible to the powerful figures they served. Zara Williams adjusted her black serving uniform and picked up another tray of champagne glasses. At 22, she moved with quiet efficiency between tables, her presence barely registering with guests accustomed to being waited on. Her dark skin glistened under the ballroom lights as she navigated the crowd with practiced grace. Table 7 had been particularly demanding all evening. The German delegation, 4 pilots from Lufthansa and 2 independent operators, had claimed the prime spot near the stage. Their voices had grown louder with each round of drinks, their sense of superiority more pronounced. As Zara approached their table with fresh champagne, she overheard Captain Klaus Weber lean toward his colleague. In rapid German, he made a crude comment about her appearance, followed by assumptions about her intelligence and education. His companions laughed heartily, emboldened by what they perceived as a private conversation. The comments grew more vicious as Zara continued her service. They discussed her background, making racist generalizations about her capabilities. One suggested she probably had multiple children with different fathers. Another wondered how someone like her could even get a job at such a prestigious event. Zara's expression remained professionally neutral as she replaced empty glasses. Her movements were precise, betraying nothing of the storm building inside her chest. She had learned to maintain composure in the face of ignorance. But these men were testing limits she'd thought she'd mastered. What the German pilots didn't know was that Zara held a master's degree in international relations from Northwestern University, graduating summa cum laude. She'd spent 2 years studying abroad, one in Berlin perfecting her German, another in Beijing mastering Mandarin. She spoke 6 languages fluently and had been working this event not just for money, but to network within an industry she hoped to enter. As the evening progressed, the German table's conversation took a sinister turn. Captain Weber began discussing irregularities and safety inspections, speaking with confidence that his words were completely private. His colleague mentioned substantial payments made to aviation officials in Eastern Europe. The details became increasingly specific. They discussed falsified maintenance records that allowed compromised aircraft to continue flying passenger routes. They laughed about safety inspectors who looked the other way for the right price. Most shocking, they detailed a cargo operation that transported undeclared goods through Prague, bypassing customs and international regulations. Zara continued serving, but now she was memorizing every word. Her linguistic training had taught her to retain complex conversations in multiple languages. What had started as cruel personal attacks had evolved into confessions of federal crimes that endangered thousands of lives. The aviation board members sat just 3 tables away, including several international safety inspectors who would be very interested in what she was hearing. The irony wasn't lost on her. These men's racism had made them careless, and their carelessness was about to expose crimes they'd spent years covering up. Captain Weber raised his glass in a mock toast, making another disparaging comment about the service staff's intelligence. His colleagues joined in, their laughter carrying across the ballroom. Other guests glanced over, some with amusement, others with uncomfortable recognition. That's when Zara made her decision. She had endured their mockery with dignity, but she would not allow their crimes to go unreported. Setting down her serving tray with deliberate care, she turned to face table 7 directly. In perfect, crystalline German, with the precise accent of someone who had lived in Berlin, Zara spoke clearly enough for surrounding tables to hear. She asked if the gentleman would like her to translate their conversation about falsifying safety records for the aviation board members seated nearby. Her pronunciation was flawless, her grammar impeccable, her tone deadly serious. The effect was immediate and devastating. Captain Weber's glass slipped from his hand, shattering against his plate. His colleagues sat frozen, their faces draining of color as the implications hit them. Conversations at neighboring tables stopped as people turned to witness the confrontation. Zara continued in German, mentioning specific details about their Prague operation and the compromised safety inspections. She suggested they might want to discuss their confessions with the FAA representatives present, or perhaps the Interpol liaison attending the summit. The ballroom fell into stunned silence. Aviation officials began moving toward table 7, their interest clearly piqued. Hotel security appeared at the edges of the room, alerted by the sudden shift in atmosphere. Captain Weber attempted to stand, his movements unsteady from both alcohol and shock. He found himself facing not just Zara, but a growing circle of aviation authorities summoned by the commotion. His racist assumptions had led him to confess to crimes in front of the very people empowered to prosecute them. Zara switched to English, her voice carrying clearly across the ballroom. She explained that she had understood every word of their conversation, including details about safety violations, bribed officials, and illegal cargo operations. She offered to provide a full translation for any investigators who might be interested. The German delegation realized they had walked into a trap of their own making. Their prejudice had convinced them they could speak freely, their arrogance had made them careless, and their racism had blinded them to the intelligence of someone they dismissed as inferior. Within minutes, business cards were being exchanged between Zara and several aviation security officials. Her linguistic skills, combined with her detailed recollection of the conversation, made her an invaluable witness to what appeared to be a significant international corruption case. The evening's remainder was a blur of interviews, statements, and the quiet satisfaction of watching prejudice and criminality exposed by their own arrogance. The German pilots who had mocked her education now faced international investigation, criminal charges, and the end of their aviation careers. As the gala wound down, several aviation executives approached Zara with business cards and job offers. Word had spread quickly about her impressive linguistic abilities and composure under pressure. The networking opportunity she had hoped for had arrived, though not in any way she could have anticipated. The investigation that followed would uncover a corruption network spanning multiple countries and airlines. Safety inspections would be reviewed, officials would be prosecuted, and aviation security would be strengthened because of one woman's refusal to remain silent in the face of both racism and criminality. Zara walked out into the Chicago night with more than just her serving fee. She carried the knowledge that intelligence and dignity had triumphed over prejudice and corruption. The men who had dismissed her as uneducated had learned that assumptions based on race could be catastrophically expensive. The story of what happened at Table 7 became a cautionary tale about the dangers of underestimating people based on their appearance. More importantly, it demonstrated that justice often comes from unexpected sources, sometimes from someone who was just supposed to serve the champagne. If this story resonates with you, if you've ever been underestimated because of how you look or where you work, please like this video and share it. Subscribe to support more stories that celebrate the quiet strength of those who rise above prejudice with grace and intelligence. Because sometimes the most powerful response to ignorance isn't anger. It's simply proving them wrong with dignity and competence that speaks louder than their assumptions ever could.